Welcome to Old School Vegan.
We're going to prepare sustainable plant-based meals the old school way.
We're going to take you back to the day when diet was relied upon for health and healing.
Using fresh fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, and clean water.
We will prepare foods using organic whole ingredients that are locally sourced and in season. Meals are prepared from scratch using preparation methods such as soaking, sprouting, and fermenting for optimal nutrition, digestion, and assimilation.
With over 30 years of experience preparing raw and cooked plant-based meals, we will demonstrate the proper way of making meals that are tasty and balanced,
saving you time and energy and sparking creativity and confidence. Discover how simple and delicious it is to make vegan meals a staple in your lifestyle.
The history of fermentation. Fermentation is the process in food processing of converting carbohydrates to alcohol or organic acids using microorganisms, yeast, or bacteria under anaerobic conditions. That means without oxygen. The term fermentation also refers to the chemical conversion of sugars to ethanol, such as in the process of wine making, beer making, cider, and the like. This also occurs in the leavening of bread, where CO2 produces yeast activity. Fermentation is also instrumental in the preservation of sour foods, which produces lactic acid. Such foods as sauerkraut and yogurt do this. Natural fermentation precedes human history. Early civilizations, if you didn't know this, use fermentation to preserve foods, to make toxic foods edible. Fermentation produces lactobacilli, or good bacteria. This helps in assimilation of nutrients, creates B vitamins, omega-3 fatty acids, and many other essential nutrients that the body needs. Live food cultures are the best way to promote healthy, friendly bacteria in our gut. Many of us take probiotics, and a lot of these are pasteurized. Many of them don't have any live cultures in them. Fermenting food yourself is cost-effective and benefits your body in many ways, especially with the production of a healthy flora and good digestion. Today we're going to make some fermented foods for us. We're going to make Rejuvelac, a fermented beverage made with sprouted quinoa. We're going to make a beverage called a lassi. That's a fermented drink using the Rejuvelac. We're going to make a macadamia nut cheese, and we're going to make sauerkraut. So stay tuned.
Rejuvelac is very simple to make. It's very nutritious for you. Whenever you have a stomach ache or you just don't feel like yourself, drink a glass of Rejuvelac and it will revive you. It is full of enzymes. I know lots of us take many enzyme supplements. You will get those same enzymes from Rejuvelac. It will really help to break down the nutrients in the food. In this case, we're making it with quinoa. So quinoa is a complete protein. So this Rejuvelac will have that protein in it, as well as many vitamins, including the B vitamins, and a little bit of B12. Okay, so let's get started. So we have our sprouted quinoa. And we're just going to put that in our blender. And then we're just going to add enough water to cover. Cover it by about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And this is the most important part. You want to blend it for 5 seconds on high. Blending it longer than 5 seconds will make the Rejuvelac taste very bitter, and that's what you don't want. Okay, that was 5 seconds. So we really just want to break down the seeds, and that starts the fermentation process. Just add a little bit of water to the blender so we can get all of our yumminess from the tricolor quinoa. I like to use the tricolor because I think it has more of a depth of flavor, but you can use any quinoa. You can use plain white if you want to. Okay, so if I fill this up with water and let it sit for 3 days, that's the basic Rejuvilac. But I don't want to do the basic Rejuvilac. I want it to have a little bit, I want to add a little bit of flavor. So I'm going to add a fresh lime, and I'm just cutting it in half. And I'm going to squeeze the juice in there. And I'm going to actually drop that in. So that's just going to add a little bit more flavor to it, give it a fresh taste. And then I'm going to add a sprig of fresh mint. And then I'll fill it up. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir. Get things going. Now, if you don't want to use lime, you can use lemon, you can use orange, any kind of a citrus you can use. And you can also use basil and different types of herbs. Then I'm just going to cover it with a sprout bag and put a rubber band around it. And I'm going to let this sit out at room temperature for 2 to 3 days. The weather is cool right now, so 3 days. And I'm not going to look at it or anything like that. I'm just going to let it sit. Now here's one I did ahead of time. So you can see at the top of this that there's a little bit of film. That's the good lactobacteria. So this is what it should look like. It should not stink. You should be able to smell the fermentation, but also smell the fresh mint and the fresh lime. That's really, really a good looking Rejuvilac. And so then what we want to do is strain this. So we're going to bring another jar. You'll use a lot of these jars. And the great thing about this is the base recipe, but you can use the same recipe to make a ginger beer or a sorrel punch or anything like that. So I'm putting a rubber band in my sprout bag over this jar, and then I'm just going to pour that in. And you can see all those seeds mostly go to the bottom of the jar, and we definitely don't want to reuse those again. You want to strain those out. Oh, that smells so good. So this sprout bag that I'm using is actually a grocery bag that I got from my grocery store. They sell them now as produce bags. And so get yourself a few. You'll find that they really come in handy. And there we have our strained Rejuvilac. And I'm just going to have a little taste because I'm very thirsty right now. And I could use a little pick-me-up like Rejuvilac. It's delicious. I couldn't drink it like that if it didn't taste good. Drink Rejuvilac. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make a strawberry lassi using the Rejuvilac. And one thing I want to say about the Rejuvilac is that when you go through the sprouting and fermentation process, all of the nutrients are broken down into their usable units. So proteins now are amino acids, fats are fatty acids, and the carbs are simple sugars. So your body doesn't have to create the enzymes to digest those foods. You're drinking those enzymes when you have a fermented beverage. So that's great. Less digestive effort on your part. So we're going to start. I have some frozen strawberries. Let's put a heaping cup in our blender. And I'm also going to add a banana. Let's put all of those in there. And then I have some cashews that I'm going to use as my thickener, and they have been soaked. So I'm going to add about a cup of cashews to that because I want it thick and creamy and delicious. And a little bit of agave for sweetener. And then I'm just going to pour in the Rejuvelac enough to cover. And let that blend. So I have the Vitamix blender here, and it has a smoothie setting, and I'm just going to put it on that. Okay. So let's have a taste. But look at that creaminess, huh? Doesn't that look good? Wow, that's really yummy. I think it's perfect. I'm just going to let it blend a little bit more. Okay, now I'll invite Murali to come back and have a smoothie with me. So this is something that you can make. It's an easy way to get your Rejuvelac in. Especially if you really don't care for the taste of Rejuvelac, you can use it for so many other things. There you go.
Thank you, Lakita. Cheers, salud. Here's to help.
Salud. That's good.
Ooh, wee.
Yum, yum.
Oh my goodness. Okay, here we are again to make our sauerkraut. A lot of times people say, well, where do vegans get B vitamins? Where do they get their protein? Well, all plants have protein in it. And fermented foods will give you your B vitamins. And so we're going to get right to making this sauerkraut. So I'm going to extract some leaves. This is going to cover it, help it in the fermentation process. So I'm going to set those aside. And I'm removing the core. That core just, you can ferment the core, but to me it's like finding a toothpick in your food. It's just too crunchy. And I like to take it out. But if you choose to ferment the core, you can. So we're going to start just by chopping this up. And I'm just going along against the grain. And it's going to kind of chiffonade it or make little ribbons of cabbage. And remember, folks, that when you're fermenting at home, you don't have to buy the expensive gadgetry. You can buy a crock and spend $69 for a crock, but I'm just going to use a bowl. Everyone has a glass bowl at home. The same with sprouting. It's not necessary to go out and buy a sprouter. It's convenient, but they don't always work as efficiently as your own everyday kitchen items. And so I'm chopping this in a fine manner. A lot of times people want thick sauerkraut, but it takes longer to ferment with big giant pieces, so keep that in mind. And you can see this takes no time. You can also use your food processor with the attachments that come with it, and just use the attachment that will give you a slicing, and it'll slice this up. And so any big pieces that I see in there, I'm just going to put a knife to it. And what we like, and this is just our base, but what we like to add is some flavor. So I'm going to add some caraway seeds, just a few, some tarragon, some dried tarragon flakes. And as you grow your herbs, some salt. You can dry them in the dehydrator yourself. Some turmeric. Turmeric is really, really good cleanser. And then I'm going to add a little chili, because chili is what activates the property curcumin in turmeric. Also gives your sauerkraut some flavor. So I'm going to put a squeeze of lemon in it. It's really a simple sauerkraut that really ferments rapidly. But we're going to boost the fermentation by adding what? Rejuvelac. So you get to see all the uses of Rejuvelac. I'm just going to add about a half a cup of Rejuvelac. That's going to start the fermentation. And make sure your items are pristine. So when you're fermenting foods, you don't want to introduce any additional bacteria, even though it's there. So I'm going to use some food grade gloves, and I'm going to just massage this just to get it going. And usually the juice from a previous batch you can use as a starter as well. I'm going to add a little more turmeric. It's going to give it some color as well. I know that seems like a lot, but it's not. And this massaging it is really helping to break down the membrane of the vegetable, the cabbage in this case as well. And you can ferment beets, you can ferment carrots. Pickles are fermented foods. This is smelling so good already. And the quantities, I put about a tablespoon of salt in it, dash of the other ingredients. And if you want it hot, you can put more chili in it. And you can already see, even with the Rejuvelac, a lot of liquid is forming just from the breaking down of the membrane. That's more than the half a cup that I put in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cover it with the leaves. And I'm giving it a nice hat. And then we're going to put a weight on it. So I'm going to take my pie pan, my pie plate, and cover it. Then I'm going to take some saran, and this is twofold. You're not putting this on to seal it. You're putting it on to create a barrier for your weight. And so I'll put a weight on it. That's going to seal in the cabbage, create a barrier between this and this, the cabbage and the bowl, the cabbage and the pie pan. The pie pan is barriered. The barrier for the pie pan is the cabbage leaves. So we're going to let this sit for about 3 to 5 days. And by then, actually, overnight it's fermented. So tomorrow, 24 hours from today, from this moment, it's ready to eat. But some of us like it a little less crunchy, so let it ferment for the duration, 5 days. You don't have to keep looking at it. Let it sit in a corner in your kitchen, undisturbed. You can cover it, keep it at a nice room temperature, about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's as simple as that. Fermented foods. Helps with good digestion, helps with elimination, helps with assimilation. Assimilating our nutrients is another issue that we all are suffering from. and we can eliminate that with fermented foods. So that's it. For me, I'm going to bring Lakita back, and we're going to show you making some cheese.
So now we're going to make some nut cheese. And today we are using some macadamia nuts that have already been soaked. And this cheese will be sort of a soft, spreadable cheese by the time it's finished. And we're going to use our Rejuvelac and a little bit of salt, a little bit of sea salt in there. And then just enough Rejuvelac so that it will blend. So again, I'm blending this in my blender on the smoothie setting. All right, so I'm just going to have a look at it, and right now it has a nice creaminess to it and cheesiness to it. It's blended very well. And then I'm just going to pour this into my nut bag. Now you can use any kind of a lightweight. You can use a cheesecloth if you want to. I happen to really love this bag because it just makes it easier to keep everything together. So that's what I'm pouring it in. It's like a very lightweight bag that I'm putting it in. But again, a cheesecloth works just fine. So I'm pouring this into the bag. And you can use any kind of nut. It doesn't have to be a macadamia nut. I like it because it has a lot of fat, and we need fat for our cheese. But if I've made almond milk, then I use the pulp from that. You can mix that with macadamia nuts. You can use cashews if you want to. But I really think that mac nuts and almonds make the best cheese. This will be kind of like a ricotta cheese. Get as much of it out of your food processor as possible, because just remember that could be that last bite that you wish that you had, that you left in the food processor. Okay, that's good. So we have all that in our bag, and we're just going to cover it. And then just like we did with our sauerkraut, we're going to put a weight on it. So I'm going to first cover this with a little bit of saran. I have it inside of my colander. And I'm just going to put a weight on. And then I cover it with a dishcloth. And you want to keep it in a semi-warm place at room temperature, around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, with good airflow. And then after 24 to 48 hours, you want to take it out. So I have some that I made ahead of time here. And this has just only been fermenting for 24 hours. And this is a combination of mac nuts and almond pulp. And you can see that it's gotten much thicker. It would be a nice spreadable cheese on some nice yummy toast or flatbread or something like that. But what's missing right now is flavor, so we have to give it some flavor. So that it actually tastes like cheese, as close as possible. Now, the reason why we love cheese is mostly for the creaminess, I think, and also that saltiness. So that's what we want to make sure that we put into this. So for the saltiness, I'm going to add a little bit of chickpea miso paste. This is soy-free. This is chickpea miso. We like to focus on gluten-free and soy-free in our cooking, in our preparations. And so that's why we're using the chickpea pasta. So I'm just spreading that in. And then I'm going to use some nutritional yeast, adding some B12, and that's going to really help with that cheesy flavor. And then I'll taste it and see if we need to add some salt. It smells wonderful. It really smells like a cheese right now. Doesn't it kind of look like a cheese? Maybe like some little bit of a mozzarella or ricotta. So what's going to happen is this flavor is really going to develop. I mean, you could actually eat it right now, but if you put it in the refrigerator for a couple of days, after about 2 days, it's going to be like just right there where you like it, because it will continue to ferment in the refrigerator. Let's have a little taste. Okay, coming along very well. We need a little bit more nutritional yeast, a little more miso, about half a tablespoon. I think we need a little bit more salt. And I'm going to add a squeeze of lemon juice, just to give it some brightness and help to break down all those flavors. Yes, that's looking good. Now, another thing you could do if you wanted to make this like a log, kind of a cheese, you could actually roll it inside of that saran wrap. You could put some black pepper on it. You can put some dried herbs and you have like a cheese log, which is also nice. If you wanted to make it taste more like a cheddar cheese, you could blend in a red bell pepper in it. So just put a red bell pepper in there and add it to this. And then you can put it in your food dehydrator. And that would really help to take a lot of the moisture out of it. And it would be more like a hard cheese, and it would have more of a cheddar flavor. So the wonderful thing about all this is that you can just be creative. We all bring with us a lot of history and culture and experiences, and that's what you want to add to your food. What I'm giving you now is just the base recipes, but you have to make it your own. Otherwise, you won't stick with it. You'll try it one time and say, oh yeah, that was good, but then you won't do it again. But when you make it your own and it has that memory for you, then that's something that you'll continue to do. So here we go. That looks pretty good. Smells wonderful. You have a very nice, raw, gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, delicious cheese. And this will last in the refrigerator up to 30 days. Put it in your salads. Use it on toast, on your bread. So thank you so much for joining us. Morley, come on out. This concludes our show for today. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. So please keep in touch with us and stay tuned for more yummy goodness. If you want to learn more, please stay tuned. We will be doing some live classes. So this is giving you some basic information on soaking and sprouting and use of ingredients. And then we'll start putting all of this information together and making some wonderful foods like flatbreads and wraps and burgers and pizzas.
Yes.
And
all of our yummy foods from Raw Soul days, from Longevity Foods days, and from 2 Day.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Remember, hit the like button and subscribe.
To Old School
Vegan.
Vegan.